Hello everyone. Welcome to a new chess video. Welcome to the MORRA GAMBIT video. Probably the most requested video on the channel. Well, here it is at last. Today, we're going to look at a truly impressive gambit that will leave your opponent speechless and give them a headache for the whole game. So what is the MORRA GAMBIT, chess teacher? Since it's so famous, explain it to me, because it's really impressive. E4, the most traditional move in chess, and the MORRA gambit is played when they respond with c5, the Sicilian defense. We've already made several videos on how to counter the Sicilian defense, but without a doubt, this one is going to be the best, since we're playing the MORRA gambit. d4. Notice that the goal of the Sicilian is to capture on d4, and right from the first move, we're already giving up the d4 pawn. So when they take it, we're not going to recapture it, because it's called a gambit. Instead, we're also going to offer the c3 pawn. That is, now if black decides to capture this pawn, they'll end up with an extra pawn. Notice that we've traded 2 pawns just for one of the opponent's pawns. So what's good about this then? Well, let's see. Especially, as with all gambits, when we give up a pawn on purpose, right? It's one thing to blunder a pawn. Just like all of you, I lose pawns too, you know? But if we give it up intentionally, it's to get better piece activity and more initiative. Notice that now we have a knight developed, while black has nothing out and a super strong central pawn, which I'll explain how to use. Our bishops can go wherever they want, while blacks are stuck here, unable to go anywhere. Also, look at this queen. She can move along the diagonal, has open diagonals, and also controls the central file, so she's an incredibly powerful queen. The black queen can only come out through here. Let's see how to take advantage of this. First, what's the purpose of the central pawn? Well, the purpose of this pawn, remember this well, is to drive away the knight on f6. That is, when they play knight to f6, we play e5. Right now, that would be a super strong move, because this knight can't go here because of our knight, nor here because of the queen, so it would have to go back. Therefore, playing knight to f6 here would be a terrible move, since we could punish it directly with e5. Now, black will probably want to prepare this move and will first play, for example, knight to c6 to protect this square here. Now they could safely play the knight to f6. We are going to continue with the move knight to f3 to keep putting pressure on this square, because if they now play knight to f6, we will again play the move e5. Therefore, black has to defend it. d6 would be the most appropriate move, and so we will continue with our development. Check out what a great piece development we have, with a bishop that's super well positioned, knights that are also very well placed, and here black thinks they can finally play knight to f6 because e5 is no longer possible. But actually, e5 is more possible than ever. Take a good look, okay? We're going to play e5 anyway. They've brought their knight out to f6, so we play e5, just like I told you. And now you might say, come on, chess teacher, you're giving away a pawn. We're already down a pawn, and now you're giving away another one? Well, this pawn, notice that it's dangerous. It can be captured with the pawn or with the knight from c6. And let me tell you something, capturing with the knight from c6 is a huge blunder, and here they'd already be losing the game. It doesn't look like it, does it? It seems like they're attacking our bishop, we're offering a knight trade, but look at this combination. We trade knights, and now we simply take advantage of the fact that the queen is only defended by the king to distract her from the defense. Bishop takes on f7, we give a check, the king is forced to capture, and now we would take the queen, meaning we'd end up with an extra queen. So this pawn can't be taken with the knight, as we've just seen. So how should we continue? Well, obviously they have to capture with the pawn. With the knight? Impossible. What do we do if they take with the knight? We trade knights, and bishop to f7 wins the queen. So let's see what happens if they take with the pawn, which is actually the best move for black. So I'm going to recommend the following. Here, we're going to trade queens on d8 and follow a very strong strategy to beat our opponent. Therefore, we'll start with queen takes d8, exchanging queens. And here, black has 2 options. Capture with the knight or capture with the king. Let's see, that capturing with the king doesn't seem very strong, because first, they lose the right to castle, and second, we could capture here, and right now, this king wouldn't be able to return. These 2 pawns are doubled and isolated. So here the advantage would be absolutely overwhelming for us, right? So what do black's pieces have to do here? Well, take the queen with the knight. All right, there is no debate here. They have to take with the knight. So how do we continue? They've lost the defense of this square. We could capture here and we'd simply be down a pawn. However, we have a much stronger move. As I always tell you, you have to remember the ideas, not the exact moves. Why? Because if you're memorizing the exact moves and in the middle of the game you forget one, we're in trouble. Or if your opponent plays a different move, we're in trouble then too. Also, if we remember the ideas, no matter what your opponent does, you'll know how to position your pieces to carry out that idea you have in your head and that we've worked on in this lesson. Now then, what's the idea once the queens have been exchanged? Pay attention, okay? First idea, play e5. Second idea, exchange the queens. And once we've exchanged the queens, what's the idea then? Bring the knights in to try to fork the king and rook, here and here. Let's jump in with this one, because now the threat is even stronger. Let's see. Here black has several defensive ideas. The first, and by far the worst, is to try to defend with the king. You'd be surprised how many people try to defend with the king. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is checkmate in 2 moves. We capture the pawn with check. The king can't move forward because all the pieces are covering those squares, so it has to go back. And then we just jump in with the knight and deliver checkmate in 2 moves. So here, when we bring the knight here, defending with the king is a terrible move. Another move that might seem quite logical to defend this point is to play knight to e6. As you can see, now they're defending this square. We simply capture the bishop, and now, after they recapture, we could break through. This is called removing the defender. In other words, if they defend with the knight, we just eliminate the knight, and now we can break through. So these 2 moves are disastrous. We win with both moves. As you can see, this knight here is very strong. If they can't defend this in any other way, how should they do it? Well, the only way to avoid the fork is to move the rook away. Notice that we're covering all the options, so whatever they do, you'll know how to respond. Here, the only option left to avoid losing the rook is to place it on this square here. And here, we're gonna continue as follows. Should we check the king so that black can't castle? Not yet, because they can just come here, take our knight, and we'd have to move again. So here, it's better to prepare knight takes e5, and now, yes, we cut off the king's escape. Notice with both knights, and we're also coming in through here. So what are we threatening here? What's the strongest threat right now? Well, right now, we're threatening checkmate in just 1 move, right? What's going on? Black has to defend. How can they defend? Can they defend, for example, with the knight? Look, knight here, it seems like nothing happens, right? Betrayed, and if the king comes here, he just moves aside. All right, look, because here we're threatening checkmate, and it seems like the only possible defense is this one right here. However, I'm going to show you how to take this rook here when they defend with the knight. Notice that these moves are pretty much forced, okay? If you didn't quite catch that, rewind the video. I don't want this to get too long. And now, watch how to capture this rook here. Simply put, the first thing we need to do is capture this knight, that is, remove the defense, and now we're going to give this check. Look, check. The king can't move forward because of the knight, so it has to come over here. And now we take the bishop with check, so they have to capture. We remove all the defenses, and now, yes, we come in from the other side, check, and we're going to take the other rook. So when we take this pawn here and threaten checkmate, it seems like the only way to defend this square is with this piece. And as we can see, after the exchanges, we win this rook here. Therefore, what they have to do is not defend this square here and try to free the king with the move e6. The only move that saves them is to play e6, and I'm also going to show you how to win against e6. In other words, with this video, we've got it all covered. When they play e6, what's the idea? Well, it's to give the king an escape route if we come in with check, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We can't now try, I don't know, to bring the bishop here or something like that, or castle. Why? Because they'd check us and then castle on the next move, and we'd lose all the initiative we had in the attack. So now, yes, we have to bring in the knight, check, and the king has to go to the escape route. Also, it's a really bad square, because here they're losing the chance to develop this bishop, and look at all these pieces stuck back here, unable to do anything. we're in a much better position. What do I recommend you do now? Well, I recommend you bring the bishop here with 2 threats. The first and most obvious is to capture here, and this rook is left with no way out. It couldn't go anywhere since this square is defended by the bishop. And the second threat would be to come over here, and notice that it would be checkmate again. And the only move that defends against these 2 possibilities right now is the move b6. And let's see, we can't capture here, nor can we check because it's defended by the pawn. So how do we continue? Well, here we can continue in many ways. The truth is, we've already won. For example, castling would be a good option, or even the one I recommend is to place this rook right here on c1 to take over this open file and put more pressure on the king and be able to attack him. Notice that now the black pieces can't move. The knight can't get out because we would capture it. The bishop can't go anywhere. It would have to waste several moves, and even then the king would still be stuck in the center of the board. Also, if this knight tries to get out, for example through here, we would also have this fork. So we have tactics no matter what the opponent does. Just think about it a little, and you'll come up with tons of ideas. So remember that after the Sicilian, we played d4, directly giving up the pawn, and now c3, giving up this other pawn. In other words, we've sacrificed a pawn in the opening to get a better position. Here we've seen what happens if they play knight to f6. We immediately break with the pawn, but they can also play knight to c6 to defend it. In that case, we'll continue with knight to f3, and now black will play d6 to support this point. They have to do it, because if not, what would happen? Obviously, we would hit them with e5. So, d6. And now, how do we continue with the white pieces? Well, we'll continue with bishop to c4. Up to this point, everything's the same. The thing is, everything looks great if they play knight to f6, because that's actually what we want. But of course, ChessTeacher, what happens if they play e6? Notice now, they're cutting off the bishop's diagonal. So, all those little tricks with bishop takes f7 no longer exist. So here, how should we continue? Well, here we have a lot of ideas. As I always tell you, what's important? It's knowing the ideas, not just memorizing the moves. For example, here they've changed the plan on us. And if we had lost sight of the ideas, we wouldn't know what to do anymore. Well, here we're just gonna calmly continue with castling, since it's always a good move. Why? Because we put our king in a safe position. You should know that it's always a move that will work well for us. Also in this gambit, obviously. And now, yes, they could play knight to f6. Why? Because now this little trick here no longer exists. We're going to play queen to e2 for several reasons. First, to support this advance. Obviously, you remember the plan, right? What was the plan? To play e5, right? When they bring out the knight. So it's a logical move to support the pawn with the queen. Also, in the future, we'll have the rooks connected. And now, for example, after the move bishop to e7, which is probably what you're all thinking, we can bring the rook to the queen square. And look at what a beautiful pin we have with the rook on this point. So now, we're preparing e5 under better conditions, with the queen supporting and the rook attacking the queen. Here, a logical move for black could be to castle, right? They still haven't castled yet. They haven't put their king in safety, and now it's our turn. What are we going to do? e5. We have to play e5. This is the key. Look at the piece arrangement we have. Well, our opponent is stuck here with a bishop that can't get out, with an e5 that's attacking his knight, and also attacking this pawn. He can't take the pawn because we would take his queen, so he's forced to move this knight. This bishop still hasn't come out, while our bishop, look, can go wherever it wants. Therefore, the position is infinitely better. They can't capture, so as we've said, they have to move this knight. Where can this knight move? Well, honestly, the healthiest response would probably be to come over here, since by capturing this pawn like this with the knight, they defend it. And here, what do we have to do? Well, capture the pawn. Look how easy that is. And after the exchanges, we simply bring the bishop over here and take advantage of the queen's pin to put more pressure on this knight. Notice that it's attacked by 2 pieces and defended by 2 pieces, but we can jump in with the knight either here or here, and we'd add a third attacker. And taking advantage of the fact that this knight can't move, we'd win a piece. We'd actually win this knight because there's no piece. I've said piece like 20 times. Oh man, well, it's totally fine. I'm just annoyed with myself. There would be no way to defend this knight. Here, actually, the most common move is queen to c7, trying to get out of the pin, but in fact, they end up in another one. That is, there's no way to save it. Also, if they play queen to c7, which is the most common move, I recommend jumping with the knight. Notice that we're attacking the queen and also attacking the knight. If they simply take the knight, we take their queen, and if they move the queen, whether here, here, or wherever, we just take the knight, and we've won an extra piece. Careful, because black also threatens some important tricks, and we need to know about them. For example, here they can play e6, a totally normal move to block this bishop's diagonal. We play knight to f3, knight to c6, we go bishop to c4 as always, and knight to f6. And now, how can we continue? Well, for example, we could continue with castling. A very normal move here would be queen to c7, and we'll play queen to e2 to continue with our usual development, and we're also supporting this point here. Notice that now black is defending it, we're supporting it, as always, nothing at all changes. A normal move for black here could be, for example, a6, to prevent these annoying knight jumps, and white could consider a move like this one here. But this would already be a mistake, because it attacks this knight, and this knight simply jumps over here. This knight is a nuisance. I move it away, and now you're already lost. Why? Because they jump with this knight over here, and I invite you to really think about this move, because here, we're lost no matter what. They attack our queen and take away our defense. So if they take away our defense, we're going to deliver a brutal checkmate here, and if not, well, we're going to capture the queen. Here, if you want, you can pause the video and you'll see that there's no possible solution. We lose the game either way. So we have to find a solution to stop this. Lucky for you, you're on the right channel, huh? Give it a big like. No. Seriously now, I've already recorded this whole video. It had taken me more than, when I record videos, it usually takes me about an hour or so. I had recorded the whole thing, and when I went to check it on the camera, it hadn't recorded. So I had to start all over again from scratch. My voice is already shaking. So please, if you leave me a big like, a nice comment, or even subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, you'll be helping me out a ton. Now, I'm going to show you how to stop this so it doesn't happen to you in your games. As you can see, I'm only here to help you. So if you help me out too, we'll be the best. Well, you already are the best. So chess teacher, I don't want to fall for this trap. Let's rewind to see that the mistake was simply putting the bishop here. If you've been paying attention to the video, and especially to what I told you, that the important thing is the ideas, not the moves, many of you probably thought the idea was to play e5. When this knight is here, we want to play e5. And now that it's available, we have to play it. Notice that here, it's even more important, because for the trick to work, black needs to have this diagonal open. That's why they haven't played d6 at any point. And by not playing d6, we take advantage and push this e5. Now we're attacking this knight, which will have to move somewhere interesting, right? If it comes here, it's attacked by two pieces, so it would lose a pawn. Here, it would lose the vase. The most interesting move seems to be here, right? Now it's attacking this pawn with three different pieces. If we push here, they take here, and we lose the pawn. So what do we have to do? Simply defend the pawn while developing. Now, just because I told you this move was bad, don't go thinking that moving this bishop is bad, okay? Please. Let's place this bishop here, which is the piece we still need to develop, and we'll also defend this pawn here. All right, good. So now what? Well, now the black pieces might try to justify this knight jump here with the move f6. We attack this point here, and on top of that, it's defended. So now they can't capture because it's pinned by the queen, but in the future, maybe they could. Let's see then how we can turn the tables and how we can win this position, which, in fact, I'm telling you right now is already won. However, if you don't really know the fundamentals or the main ideas, it's going to be very hard for you to know how to win this position. How should we continue? Well, here the incredible move is the following. It's an absolutely brutal move, right? Knight to d5. An incredible knight sacrifice. Why do we sacrifice the knight? First of all, let's see what we're threatening. Most importantly, the queen. We're also threatening this pawn here. Plus, this knight is very well placed, so it's an impressive threat. Now then, chess teacher, what happens if they take your knight? Of course, everything looks great if they don't take your knight, But if they do, not only are you down a pawn, you're down a pawn and a knight. Well, here we'll capture this pawn with a discovered check. And it's not just this discovered check, but we also reveal the queen. Notice, it's check and we take the queen. But black can still save themselves. They bring the knight back and end up with an extra knight. How can that be, chess teacher? Well, here, simply, remember this well, we trade these pieces. Look how easy it is. We trade these pieces. The pin is still in play. And now, how do we continue? We capture here. Careful, it looks like black has escaped. I capture here, and nothing at all happens here. Well, here I simply give you my queen. I capture here. I give you my queen. But we quickly get it back by taking this rook. Look, and how does the position stand now? Well, we've ended up with an exchange up, but not only that. Look, black's pieces can't move. Only this bishop can move. And actually, it can't either because it's pinned. Nothing can move. This rook can't move either because of the bishop. And now, watch out. We're coming in with the rook here, queen and king. This position is completely lost for black. Plus, look at our king. Look at theirs, right? Nothing more to say. So, if you've made it this far, you've reached a position that's very hard to lose. And with fairly straightforward play, you all should be able to win. I'm telling you, in the next moves, you put this here, discover attacks with the bishop, and on the next move, it's practically checkmate, and if not, you'll win a lot of material. Let's take a look at an interesting point. Here, for example, they might play knight to c6, knight to f3, d6, bishop to c4 to block this diagonal, and e6, and now we simply castle. All right, chess teacher. You've been explaining to me all along what to do when black manages to get their knight to f6. We have to fight to play e5. All right, chess teacher, but what if they don't play knight to f6? A lot of you asked me this in the comments, right? You told me, chess teacher, that if they do this, I do that, but of course my opponent, for example, can also bring the knight over here, and then I don't know how to continue. Well, don't worry. Look, in this case, I'm going to show you an awesome little trick. If instead of coming this way, they get clever and want to bring the knight out over here. And it's a move I just called you was bad in the other position, but in this one, it's good. We come here with the bishop attacking the knight. Before, this move was bad. Why? Because the queen was over here and this pawn wasn't. There were a lot of threats. Now the whole situation has completely changed. Yeah, chess teacher, but this move seems pointless. I'll kick you out, and then what? Are you gonna give me the bishop pair? No, I'm just gonna leave the bishop there, and you can take it if you want, because I'm gonna jump in with my knight over here. Remember the plans I always tell you about? Now we're gonna go after forks with the knight. And now what? Well, if you take the bishop, which looks like you're getting a free piece, what happens? Well, thanks to the pawn we sacrificed, this queen is free, and we can capture this spot here. Taking away our opponent's castling. And not just taking away castling, but also winning the queen. Why? Because now the king can only go here. And after this discovered check with the queen, we're attacking the queen with both the knight and the queen. So on the next move, we're gonna take it easily. So this little trick can work really well for us, especially in fast games. Since I know you all love these little tricks, pay attention. What happens if they don't take my bishop? Of course, if they take my bishop, they've fallen into the trap. But what if they don't? If, for example, they play d5, trying to avoid all this and also attacking this bishop and this one too, how do we get out of it? Well, we just move this one to f4, and now it can't be taken. Why? Because if they capture it, we simply come in here with this knight, knight takes on c7, check, and notice that it should be mate. Why? Because the king can't escape. The only way out is to give up the queen. And so here we'd end up with an extra queen. And to wrap up this fantastic gambit, I'm going to leave you with a really good exercise so you can practice and see if you've really understood this gambit. For example, here black plays knight to e7, knight from g to e7. We could continue, for instance, with this move, which we've seen is actually good now. And for example, if they attack us here, we jump with the knight. It looks like a pretty similar position, but black hasn't played this pawn here, and we haven't castled yet. What's going on? Here it seems like black has a really strong counterattack. What's this counterattack, chess teacher? Well, queen to a5, check. They give us check, and they're also putting a lot of pressure on us. But here there's a brutal move, which is b4, giving up this pawn, and now they take it with check. And this is the exercise. Let's see if you can find how we can win in this position, because black has fallen into our trap. If you want to think about it for a while, I'll leave it here for you. Well, I'll leave it here, pause the video, and take a look. And let me know in the comments if any of you can find this incredible solution. I hope you loved this MORRA Gambit. I really do love it myself. If that's the case, give the video a big like, especially because I had to record it twice and I just can't do it anymore. Leave me a great comment, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next video, friends. See you later.